Step 3, you grow hard about what you want to be. Step 4, everybody just do your thing.
Wake up, today's gonna be a good day. Wake up, today's gonna be a good day. Wake up, today's gonna be a good day. Wake up.
Welcome to Tales from the Field. My name is Bradley Ball, and it is so good to have you with us. We are back and better than ever. What a week that we have had, and we are going forward with. Last week, Daniel Taylor delivered SQL Agent 101, how to use the SQL Admin Pack in Azure Data Studio. And then on Tuesday, we had our Azure Data Community Roundtable. And on Wednesday, we released Connect to Microsoft Fabric with 5 different tools. SQL Server Management Studio, Azure Data Studio, Kusto Explorer, Microsoft Excel, and Power BI. Then on Monday, Daniel Taylor was back again with Azure Data Studio and ADS Migration Extension, a powerful combo online for SQL Migration Part 1. Ooh, you don't want to miss a thing. If this is your first time making it over to Tales from the Field, please make sure to click that subscribe button and join us weekly. It's so easy to be able to interact with our show. All you have to do is come to the hub of Tales from the Field over on YouTube and make a comment on the string. And one of my amazing co-hosts will see that comment. They will add it to the show, and you will be a part of our show. Before we go any further, though, let me introduce those amazing co-hosts. I am joined by Daniel Taylor, Andreas Padilla, Mr. Josh Ludeman, and he makes me happier than the Chicago Cubs being in second place currently, 3 out of first. Woo! It's my friend and yours, Mr. Neeraj Jhaveri. Quick call to action. One of the things I need to do is I just realized I need to be able to share my screen. And I haven't done that yet because I had to reboot just right before we were doing these things. So here we go. Let me share a screen.
Did you try turning it off and on again?
I did. As a matter of fact, it worked wonders. Go and check out our Azure Data Community. This is sponsored by Microsoft. You want to make sure you find this. If you go to the Azure Data Community, you'll be able to find live user groups around you in person that meet on a monthly basis. You'll probably be able to find virtual user groups as well if you have a particular interest, but this is the source of our community and you want to make sure you're a part of it. Go and meet with those people that are doing what you do every single day, and make sure that you really bond with them so that way you can network, because networking is a key critical part of your career. And then, speaking of networking, well, why not head over to a great event like a SQL Saturday? SQL Saturday has many live events that are free conferences that you can be in person at to be able to network, to be able to see amazing professionals, MVPs from Microsoft professionals themselves, or some of the top consultants or individuals out in the field doing things to be able to bring you lessons. As a matter of fact, let me zoom in on SQL Saturday Orlando. A quick plug on this. On October the 7th, I'm going to be there. Dan Taylor's going to be there. Josh Ludeman's going to be there. Karthik Yella's going to be there. We've got a pre-con with Buck Woody, a full day on Microsoft Fabric for the data professional that you don't want to miss. But you're going to find that over at SQLSaturday.com. And as if that wasn't enough, well, there's not just one site, but there's multiple sites you can go to. Data Saturdays are virtual events that happen around the globe. And as you can see coming up, we've got Data Saturday Durban, Gothenburg, Oslo, so many wonderful places for you to be able to find these events that are going to be in your area and get free training. Absolutely fantastic stuff. And wait, there's one more, right? Let's do a quick honorable mention. We've got a Microsoft Fabric group that we started on LinkedIn Learning. Members of our product group are there. Also, the Fabric product group, people are posting. They are constantly adding to the content that is on there. And as a matter of fact, that is one of the places that we love to get the content that we highlight for the Azure Data Community on this show. So make sure to head over to LinkedIn. There's no checks. You can just join the group and you will be in. We are close to 900 members and we are growing by leaps and bounds. Whew, speaking of leaps and bounds, that was a lot for an intro. Andreas, how was your weekend, buddy?
Oh, I couldn't have. It was, my wife said it was the weekend, one of my best weekends. Not only did we had a great pizza night on Friday, then we had barbecuing on Saturday, pool time, and then I had a soccer tournament. Man, it's kombucha time. You can't beat that. You can't.
I love it. I love a good kombucha. So how did the soccer tournament go?
Good. We didn't win. We came in third, but it was still good to get out there and throw a couple of hits. You know.
I was going to say third, man. That's solid. I'd take third any day of the week.
I know. So we had a great time. Barbecue after too. So, man, it was one for the books.
I was going to say, Josh once told me I was one of his 3 favorite people, and I was like, "That's amazing." And then he said, "In Orlando, awake at this moment," and I went, "That checks out." How about you guys? Anybody else do anything fun this weekend?
I reached level 50 in Diablo 4. I don't know. It was a rainy weekend, so we kind of just hung around, had a good time. We got some art shows coming up that Park and I are going to be doing this weekend, and some concerts coming up. So we wanted a low-key weekend. And I was joking with y'all. Normally, back in the day in my 20s, on a Friday night or a Saturday night, I'd be out clubbing it up and coming in at 3 a.m. And what was I doing this Saturday into Sunday morning? I was recording videos for Tales from the Field. So, living the life.
Hard at work, Dan. We appreciate you, buddy.
Yeah, I just did some flooring. Knocked down another room of flooring.
Nice. How about you, Neeraj? Any good plans this weekend?
Did barbecue on Saturday, and then coming Saturday, probably going to Rhode Island with a couple of friends. So let's see if it doesn't rain. Nice. I mean, it says rain in the forecast right now. So if it doesn't, then probably drive up there.
Are your kids back in school yet, Neeraj? I know all of
us
September
Floridians,
5th. We kicked them all back.
New York starts September 5th, right after Labor Day.
Nice. I had my 8th anniversary with Sue. So after we dropped Will off at college, we came home. We had a day. We went out on. I got her some presents on Sunday morning. She had some for me, which were really awesome. I got a book by Aaron Franklin on barbecue that I am looking forward to being able to make it through all those different recipes. And then we went to Blue Beetle with the kids, and then I took her to Shula's Steakhouse for a really nice anniversary dinner. So at the end of the day, she said it was an absolutely wonderful day, and she was super happy with it. So I know I did it right. Speaking of doing it right, there's a reason that we're all here, that we are gathered together, and talk about somebody who's done it right. It's your friend and mine, Neeraj Jhaveri, and he is starting us off by Azure OpenAI landing zone reference architecture.
So this came up. I was talking to one of my customer, and he's trying to start playing around with OpenAI, setting it up, and he was like, "Can you send me some reference architecture?" And one of the good sites by Freddie, he goes over the entire ecosystem. I mean, this is the big ecosystem. But the best part is breaking down the whole ecosystem into small bits and pieces. What is needed? What is like networking side? What is needed? APIM wise, what is needed? Gateways, everything that he has broken down, and then he goes down in details about how to set it up. So this definitely was one of the good architecture that helped me out to build the landing zone for the customer. I mean, usually I would bring the network guys or the landing guys to come and help you out, but something that help the customers to build the landing zone on it. So nice reader article.
Very nice. Very nice. Good stuff. Speaking of good stuff, I'm going to toot my own horn. I am up next. I have Mr. Sam Durbin. Now, I did this last week, but I wanted to point it out again because it's such a good blog, a Fabric end-to-end use case architecture overview. I'm really, really excited about this 5-part series. I'm looking forward to it as it unfolds. I love the architecture that he's got set up in place. It's going to be a pipeline that runs into a notebook, scraping web data using beautiful soup, writing to Delta Lake, and then being able to build views in his data warehouse and present in Power BI. But he's got all that data in his one lake, and he's going to show you how you access it. And it's just a great end-to-end architecture. And so people want to follow this. And I would also say go and look for additional items on the series. Sam does a great job of posting in our LinkedIn Fabric community. And so you're going to be able to find this. I know not only has Sam shared it, but it has been reshared within the Fabric Learn group. So make sure you go check that out. But just such a great blog. I couldn't help but want to hit that just one more time and make sure that people were really aware of it. And speaking of something that I want to make sure people are really aware of, we are in the presence of greatness. And that greatness comes in the form of Mr. Daniel Taylor talking about Razorad, a lake house versus warehouse versus data mart. Dan, take it home.
Greatness. That's I'm kind of blushing now. So Sam here, just another great article, right? We've been doing article after article, been publishing just a ton. But what I liked about this one is the comparison of the data mart versus the lake house versus the warehouse, right? Gives us a breakdown, shares some verbiage about it, then some videos that he's done, then goes into should I use data warehouse or a warehouse, then goes through some similarities, talks about licensing. I love the description there. An enterprise may need this much, but a smaller business may only need the PPUs for the Power BI. So rationale as to why you may need Fabric or you just may need data marts. And then the scalability, which we know the scalability is the huge part of Fabric. That's what it's bringing to the table versus, Azure Analytics, the workspace that we used to use. And then talks a little bit about the citizens and the different personas, which we're talking a lot about now. And then wraps it up with, an all-in-one comparison, an analogy, couldn't find the word there, and then a nice summary at the end. So it's a good read. It's a lengthy read. I'm a slow reader, so for other folks, it may be a short read. But for me, it was a good read to dig into. Love the writing style. Both Rez's and Sam's writing style, I really like. For some reason, they grasp me, right? So that's why I love bringing them up here.
Well, I was going to say I love it too. And speaking of things that I love, I absolutely love when we get insight from the amazing Andreas Padilla.
Yep.
And this time we're getting that insight on understanding Azure Databricks cost and using Azure Cost Management for observability and chargebacks, effective tag usage.
Oh my God. After reading this, this Inderjeet Rana, he put out this great post. And after this, I wish him nothing but wealth, health, and lots of money, because this thing is gold. This talks to us about how to go in and get granular costs from how much you're generated from your Databricks workloads. He not only shows us where to go into the subscription, go into your cost analysis section, do the filter, and then you can see a nice starter dashboard for what your Databricks workload is generating. But then he shows us how to apply tags to our workspaces, to our clusters, to our jobs, to our Delta Light tables, in order to get overall cost by workspace, overall cost by cluster type, cluster type, a ton of different types of granularity that customers are asking for. They're always saying, well, how much did I generate for workspace? How much did this department generate? I have these individuals in their own workspace. Can you get me their costs? Read this. This will break it down for you. You'll be able to pull your costs out really easily. This is a golden nugget. Golden Nugget Award for this article.
Oh, I love that. I love that. Talking about a golden nugget, right? We talk about something that is valuable, that is key, that is precious. And precious golden knowledge makes me think of this man, Josh Ludeman, up with a brief overview of responsible AI.
So wait, I'm a nugget? I'm a nugget? I don't know. I don't know.
He said precious.
I don't know how I'm going to take that.
I said
precious. At this point, I'm a little worried. I'm a nugget now. But no, brief overview of responsible AI. So for me, responsible AI, it really came out as one of those buzzword terms that, at least for me, I was like, what does that even mean? Right. This article is, Dan, you made your little dig at yourself being a slower reader. This one's even a quick one for you then by those standards. But it's a really quick article, walks you through the basic principles that we at Microsoft at least use and follow when we talk about responsible AI, and really walks you through just a basic of what does that mean, right? What are the principles of responsible AI and what do they even mean? But yeah, just a quick hitter. I saw this and I was like, you know what? This is a nice little one there to kind of just ramp people up quickly.
One would say that's a good little nugget.
Nugget of wisdom.
I'm fine with saying I bring little nuggets, but I don't know about being a nugget. I have some thoughts on that. We can talk about it offline.
Josh Nugget Ludeman. Oh. J&L. It's got a nice ring to it. And speaking of something that has a nice ring to it, we're back to Neeraj Jhaveri. And Neeraj, you've got transforming text to video, harnessing the power of Azure OpenAI and cognitive services with Python.
So, yep, same thing. I was talking to the AI team, and they were like, is there something that we can build up where we can transform the text into video? And I came across this article where I said, yes, Sachi. He shows the architecture how to do it, and then he goes into the same blog showing, he explains the whole architecture, yes, correctly. Then how to move the data from, how to convert the data from text to the video thing of it. And then he even gives you samples of it, how to build the whole Python script. Every step by step is creating it up, and that can be converted into your cognitive service, and then you can bring it up. Nicely run article wise, just because is using the latest and greatest, ChatGPT 4 and DALL-E and all of them. So definitely something that you would be interested to build it up yourself. Something, Andreas, something for you to build it up as a demo also.
Very nice, very nice. I look forward to something like that. I always love it when we get the step-by-step process of how to do it, because sometimes we get some really great blogs, but it's very difficult to figure out how things go from step A to step B when the author takes the time to spell it out like that. It's amazing, and it's very helpful. This is a blog that I found to be very interesting from its perspective, because one of the things that I wanted to focus on was you have the capability to do this, but also I thought there's an interesting workaround that we have built into the solution. But it's still nice to know if you need it, if you need like a logical separation, that you can do this amongst your workspaces. And this specifically, Sandeep Pawar, who has, again, one of my favorite all-time Twitter handles, of Pawar BI. It's money, right? How could you not? He takes us on a scenario where you've got two different lake houses, you've got different schemas, and you need to recursively upload the data to them in two separate ways. And then he walks through the process of being able to upload this data. Now, my thought process is probably part of the reason we couldn't do a shortcut is because he had different schemas that he needed to get this data loaded into. And so they didn't match up one for one. So you couldn't just do a shortcut from one workspace to another to be able to access this. And he walks through how you do this, how you point to the Azure Blob Storage to be able to recursively take this data, upload it using Python, specifically with the script. And then he's calling recursive file lookup to be able to have a loop and then populate that data frame with it. I thought this was, again, short and sweet, really, really interesting. And it comes from a perspective of finding a different way to be able to get data in other than just utilizing a shortcut. I thought that was very, very cool. And speaking of things that I think are very, very cool, we're up next with the cool Mr. Dan Taylor with new options for Windows Server 2012 R2 end of support from Azure.
Yeah, so this is it's a short article, but what I love here about how Patrick starts the article is says, okay, if you're on 2020, all right, if you're on this version of Windows or SQL Server, it's coming to the end of support, right? So what do we need to do? We need to upgrade, right? We need to modernize it. But further down in the article brings up that we at Microsoft are providing Azure Arc SQL-enabled services, right? So this will allow you, if you install this extension on your server, your Windows server that is hosting your SQL server, you're going to be able to get extended security updates for your SQL Server 2012 while you're looking at upgrading that. So we know that our folks that we work with are busy. So this gets them to the point where they get security updates. There's not going to be performance updates, but look, it's 2012, right? So it's as stable as it's going to be. So this is great. Plus you get the other benefits of Purview, the Defender, all the other benefits of having that Arc enabled installed there for that. So great little blog post. Get it done today if you got 20.
What is the end date of life date?
Next October, end of life for 2012, I believe.
Oh, okay.
So
Yeah.
times are running out there. So, and you want to be security protected.
Absolutely.
And you know you're old when you have now lived through as many license cycles of SQL Server as we have. Just saying.
You're not wrong.
Knowledge drop.
I was going to say, I started publicly speaking, and I presented at my first past summit prior to this even being released. So it's like I'm at the point in time. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I arrived to
just
SQL
eight,
Server.
right?
I was going to say I arrived to SQL Server later in my career, and the first version I worked with was 2005, and it was still active. Like the licensing was still active; it wasn't retired yet.
I was going to say I worked with 6.5 at multiple locations, and the last location it wasn't so much worked with; it was pray to God you never have to touch.
Yeah, your first presentation, if I remember, was on 2008, and it was on the compression.
Transparent data encryption. But that was one I was more doing internal. The first public presentation I ever did was in 2011, and that was on data compression. Yeah.
I remember the slide decks going.
So you saw the birth of 2012 and you seeing the end of 2012 also?
I've seen a lot, Neeraj. I've seen a lot. Speaking of someone who's seen a lot, and he's here to share it with all of us, it's Andreas Padilla, and he is bringing us the securing machine learning environments on Azure machine learning essentials.
Oh, I'm glad I saw this video by Nishant Thacker. He takes us through, he breaks down. So I've been working with some customers and trying to secure their ML workloads. And he does it really nicely the way he describes it, conceptualizes it, and breaks it down for us. He breaks it down to 4 topics: authentication, network security, data encryption, policy, and monitoring. But what's great is that for each one of those major categories, for authentication, he tells us where service principals and managed identity, where they'll be used, which one to use, where and where, how VNets are incorporated. And there is managed VNets in preview. That's coming out soon. Just keep an eye on there. You can go to Microsoft Docs and find out a little bit more about that. There are some limitations with VNets. You want to watch out for those. Even though if there's a video that you should start off with before you get to the documentation, this is the video because he breaks it down nicely. But then if you go to the documentation, you'll start to see some of the limitations with VNets when it has to do with private endpoints. Just watch out for those. There's a couple of them. It won't throw you for too much of a loop, but I want you to be aware that there will be some limitations with private endpoints for your container registry, for some of the services that ML might be talking to. And then he talks to us. He gave us some good tradecraft secrets about what's going on for data encryption that I didn't know. Then he ends it up with policy monitoring. It's worth your 14 minutes.
No, definitely. Yeah, I was going to say, Andres, I was going to echo you on Nishant. I haven't seen this video, but Nishant was presented at a few sessions. I went to the first year. I had an opportunity at Microsoft to go to our internal conference that we have ready. Nishant, great presenter. Actually, I believe, if I remember right at that point, was part of helping to roll out our Databricks partnership and technical dives and stuff like that. And great presenter, really engaging. So yeah, definitely watch that video. I'm going to as well.
Yeah.
Speaking of something that is amazing, unique, that you should definitely watch. Next up, we've got Josh Ludeman with developing a data mesh inspired vision using Microsoft Fabric.
Yeah, and this is a good article, because for me personally, I know basically what a data mesh is, but I'm trying to get, my head better wrapped around it as far as an architecture pattern things like that. And so when I found this article, I thought this would be a good one to get into, because he doesn't just lay out in here. Barry doesn't just lay out what data mesh is. He actually gets into some of, and he calls it tensions between the principles. But, I think when we all look at some of these patterns and practices, there can be things that we might look at and identify as going, this kind of is contradictory to this other point, and, or pushes on it and things like that. He actually goes through it. I'd never seen this before. Maybe I'm just naive or in the ways of data strategy, but the data strategy triangle for me was something I hadn't seen before, but I absolutely love. As far as looking at how you create an overall strategy for your organization, and then starts to wrap it in with some best practices, right? Where he talks through, starting with the most constrained dimension and, principles like that. For me, these are the kinds of things, this would have been a great guide for me when I started in consulting, doing business intelligence consulting. It's kind of like the quick and dirty training I got when I started in consulting of, this is how, we do these projects. This is a good way to approach it. And from a political standpoint, not just the technical. So love this article. Great top to bottom. Great primer.
Yeah, a little bit different. I mean, data mesh is the next architecture going on data side. So
Yep.
Very interesting article. Yeah.
Speaking of greatness, right? Coming up next, we've got another great article, and this one is by the great Neeraj Jhaveri. What's in a name? Naming your fabric artifacts.
So this was a very interesting article when in the Microsoft Learning site, Johnny Winter had kept this article. What is there in the name, right? I mean, does it, I mean, as an engineer, I might not put names correctly and all the stuff, and does it really matter? I mean, for naming your artifacts in there. Engineering practices, people like to just say sales, finance or something like that. But he goes here and goes over saying when you really coming into Fabric, it is definitely needed to have the naming convention really build it up. He's giving you some examples also. He's also sharing some Microsoft providing good formal guides to it, but he's also showing you each and every examples how to name up your stuff, just because it might get overwhelming if you start building everything in Fabric if you have not followed a good naming conventions in there. So yeah, that's exactly Brad, whatever he's showing it up, naming conventions, how you can differentiate between your different artifacts in there.
Yeah, and this is good stuff because as I was going to say, we've been playing around with our workspaces and we've been doing different demos. Neeraj, one of the things we've talked about is how it starts to get a little kludgy after a while. And there's some things that are coming that are going to help with the organization of that. But one of those things that's going to be really key moving forward is making sure you've got those naming conventions down. And so I really enjoyed this. Speaking of something else that I really enjoyed, what I wanted to share next was I wanted to share this blog by Sean Mirabile. Sean is on the Fabric Cat product group, and I actually reached out to him about this blog because I found this to be absolutely amazing. He said, Data Pipeline Performance Part 3. This is a 3-part series on data pipeline performance. The first part, as you can see, has to do with how to convert time intervals. The second part is how to be able to create an array for JSON. This one was gaining more than 15% improvement in historical loads. And I reached out and we started talking, and some of the things that he has used this process for, he gave me an example. There was a process that used to run in 60 hours, and he got this down to 5.5 hours. And then he had another customer that he used this process with, where their data load was 6.5 hours, and he got it down to 15 minutes. I mean, just mind-blowing, the level of performance. And what this really centers around is making sure that you understand the way to be able to do the looping, to do the invoke pipelines, the for each, making sure that you look at the values that are being passed through, understand the different iterations with each, how that you can actually look at optimizing these, making sure you understand the limits and the capability of the resources to be able to get into them, the challenges that you have, but how they were able to design around them to be able to get that massive performance improvements. And I just thought this is a fantastic blog, because so often we talk about how to use it, but part of a key of how to use something is that mastery of how do I optimize, how do I make it forward. And there were some amazing tips in there in this blog. I'm super excited for us to be able to look through this. Speaking of something that I'm super excited for, I also looked at this next one, and this is a topic I presented on a bunch of times. I know this process very intimately, and I loved it when I saw it. Mr. Dan Taylor, take it away and tell us about Fabric Data Warehouse, the Polaris engine.
So yeah, actually, Brad and I were having a conversation, and I felt bad at taking this link because I know this is something that you're very proud and passionate about, because you've been in since the ground floor. And what Tiago does here is he gives us, like, for example, where we're used to today, we're talking about compute and storage, right? With the old way. Now we're talking about a separation of compute and state. So what gives, and the difference here is that we have a new data abstraction level, right? We think of data as cells. And what this allows us to do with these different distributions and partitions is, let's say we have a node failure or something like that. The stateless behind the scenes is able to move the data from a node that has become inactive over to an active node. It also works great with hotspots. So if you have a hotspot in your data, it moves it from back and forth. So it's a great article. There's a lot of information in here to read, a lot to digest. Talks about the distributed, the DAGs. Help me out, Brad.
The data DAGs are data acrylic graphs, but they specifically work with the way that the distributions work. And one of the neat things is up at the top of here, this starts to break it down. And a lot of this was in a white paper that was released actually by Microsoft in 2018. And if you're not familiar with this or think you're not familiar, if you've ever used serverless pools on Azure Synapse Analytics, this is the same engine. There have been some modifications to be able to help improve some of the performance that we have that's in Fabric. But this Polaris engine was groundbreaking when we came out with it in 2018. And as we've seen it used in multiple different products, it just continues to amaze me. But this is the evolution where we started out with this. This is like our traditional SQL servers and data warehouses. This is what we had with this is what we had with dedicated pools, where the data was the cache, the metadata, and transactions are all grouped together. Well, what we've done is we've made this more of a microservices architecture in Polaris. We've got caches, but then separate to that, our metadata, our transactions, and our data are all stored in separate windows. And as you go down through here, it breaks it down really, really well. But Dan, this is a great one. I absolutely love this, and it's people should really familiarize themselves with the internals and understand how this operates, because it's really groundbreaking what we've got here.
What makes it perform?
Absolutely. And speaking of exceptional, up next we've got the one, the only, the exceptional Mr. Andreas Padilla with It's Not Just Words, LLMs, and Computer Vision.
No, it's not just words. That's what my wife says. Anyways, bad timing joke. Great video by Carlota Castelluccio. I loved it because I've seen a number of takes on how large language models are affecting computer vision. Her approach to it was spot on. She breaks down the differences between custom vision and computer vision within Azure, how to get started with both of those services. But then she starts talking about how large language models, the the DALL-E model and the Florence Foundation model, how they work into it, and what awesome things we can do for video analysis, video indexing, video summarization. It's great. Great video. I loved her take on it. She's one of the best that I've seen.
Great. Very, very nice. Good stuff. And speaking of good stuff, right? last but certainly not least, we've got some real good stuff. It's the one, the only, Mr. Josh Ludeman with Cosmos DB replicas and private endpoints.
So yeah, this was a good article because, and I think y'all know this. You've all had to coach me up when it comes to some of the finer points around private endpoints on different services. So when this article popped up onto my view, I really wanted to dive deeper into it, and so I could get a better understanding about really the journey of implementing private endpoints, and this time specifically with Cosmos DB. And what happens here is Aiden actually does a great job of walking through doing private endpoints, realizing some of the DNS configuration, and the complexities around that, and really goes through the whole thing. You can see there was, some great architecture designs, but he actually goes through step by step, great screenshots, talks through about adding, DNS zone configurations and other things like that. Just a great article on walking through how to do it, some of the things that tripped, him up as he went through the journey, and things to keep in mind as well. So just a great article from that standpoint. Loved it.
Very nice. Very nice. Okay. So wrapping things up real quick. One of the things we want to make sure that you keep in mind is that Future Data Driven is rapidly approaching. It is going to be the last week in September. I've got a session with Josh Ludeman. Andreas has got a session. Neeraj has a session. Dan has a session. Everybody's got a session. We've got multiple teammates. There are multiple people from Microsoft who are going to be there presenting at Data Driven. Go check out the Future Data Driven 2023. There's the link right there on the screen. Make sure and check it out. And then in November, the week before Thanksgiving, give it to me quick, Josh. Where are we going to be?
We're going to be on the lovely, luscious grounds of Universal Studios Orlando at the intelligent, informative Live 360 at Lowe's Royal Pacific Resort and Conference Center.
That's right. We are going to be at Live 360. We've got a pre-con with Buck Woody. It's going to be myself, Josh Ludeman, Neeraj Jhaveri. We're presenting on a full day for Microsoft Fabric for the data professional. You don't want to miss that. We've got a bunch of sessions throughout the week as well. We will be participating in the Birds in a Feather Luncheon. We're going to be participating in networking events. We're going to be participating in the different events for the attendees. So it's a wonderful time for you to be able to come and ask us your one-on-one questions. Go for it, Josh.
And if you want to see Brad possibly embarrass himself at the luau, go up at Live 360 to see possible embarrassment round 2.
I was going to say, I'm only going up on stage if Tom LaRock or you're up on stage, Josh. If you're up on stage, I will more than likely get up there. Don't forget, SQL Saturday Orlando is going to be coming. That's going to be our gap. So in September, we have Future Data Driven. In October, we have SQL Saturday Orlando. And then in November, we have Live 360. Reach out to us on our Twitter account, Tales from the Field, on our YouTube channel, or on LinkedIn if you would like us to feature your content in a future Azure Data Community Roundtable. We would love to hear from you. For all the guys, thank you so much for joining us. Anything else, fellas?
No. Be good to each other, yo.
Absolutely. Take care, everybody. Be good to one another. We'll see you later.
Today's gonna be a good day. Wake up. Today's gonna be a good day. Wake up. Today's gonna